Hello, everybody. We'll get started in about 30 seconds or so. We're just waiting for everyone to get into the room, and we're thrilled that you're joining us today virtually. Welcome, and seeing the attendee number click up and up. So we're excited to have you with us today. We'll get started in about 15 seconds or so. Hello, everyone. Well, welcome to NMWA xChange, our February episode. This program is a spinoff of the award-winning pandemic live stream series, PMA NMWA. I'm NMWA Senior Educator Addie Gayoso, and I'm joined by my colleague, Virginia Treanor, Associate Curator at the National Museum of Women in the Arts.
Hey, Addie. Hi, everyone. Nice to be here.
Hey, Jenny. Thanks for joining me again this month. As many of you know, if you're frequent viewers, each month we hosts from NMWA, typically Jenny and I, are joined by special guests to center women creatives. We consider topics relevant to our world and offer insights to collaborations NMWA is fostering while its building is closed for renovation. During this time of change, we are excited to exchange ideas with our guests and viewers. Last month, we spoke with Alex Libby, Associate Curator of Dutch and Flemish Painting at the National Gallery of Art, about 20th century artist Clara Peters.
Nope, 17th century. Sorry.
What did I say? Sorry.
You said 20th century.
Oh, so sorry. That is not right. 17th century artist Clara Peters. If you missed that episode, watch it on NMWA's YouTube channel. We'll put the link in the chat in a few minutes. You can check that episode out as well as all of our episodes of NMWA xChange, and definitely subscribe via YouTube to catch future episodes of NMWA xChange if you can't join us live.
Now I'm picturing Clara Peters as a 20th century artist.
I'm reading from a script, everybody, and it said 17th century. I know that.
She would have been an awesome 20th century artist. Well, yeah, we are lucky to have an artist with us today. Our special guest is Barbara Takenaga, Professor Emerita at Williams College in Williamstown, Massachusetts. And her work is included in our special exhibition, Positive Fragmentation, prints from the collection of Jordan D. Schnitzer and his family foundation. And that is currently on view here in Washington, D.C., not in our museum, because as Addie mentioned, we are still closed for renovation. But we are very fortunate to have partnered with American University. And so it is on view in the Katzen Arts Center at the American University Museum. And as of now, the opening hours for that are Friday through Sunday, I believe 11 to 4 or 11 to 5. And we're hoping that as things get better this spring with the pandemic, we might be able to have more opening hours for you to come and see it. Anyway, Barbara, welcome. We're so thrilled to have you here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us, Barbara. And before we get into our questions for you today, I just wanted to thank and welcome everyone for joining us today. As always, we've enabled live transcription, which you can see or hide by clicking on your CC button or the More button, the 3-dot button in your Zoom platform. And feel free to add questions in the chat. Everyone can see them, or in the Q&A, and we will do our best to respond to them today when we have time with Barbara.
So before we get into our conversation with Barbara, I just wanted to give a little bit more context about the exhibition. Here you see the kind of landing page on our website for it. As I mentioned, this is an exhibition of prints and multiples from the Jordan D. Schnitzer collection and his family foundation, which is an enormous I think, over 19,000 works of art, contemporary works of art, maybe the largest private collection in the country. The collection is extraordinary, and we had the absolute pleasure of working with them to put together this exhibition. Now, of course, our focus is always women artists, non-binary artists, and so when we were looking at the vast collection, we were looking at works by those artists. And as I was going through this enormous checklist of amazing works by amazing artists, I was really struck by how many artists are using fragmentation in one way or another in their work. And this could be kind of a fragmentation of line or form, color, but it could also be a fragmentation of text or an idea, stereotype. So there are a lot of different kind of ways into this exhibition, into thinking about the concept of fragmentation in many ways. And on your screen right now, you see a great work from Nicola Lopez that's in the exhibition. This is one from her series of urban transformations. And what you can't really get on screen, unfortunately, is the wonderful kind of collage aesthetic that she's incorporating in her work. There are a lot of kind of three-dimensional elements in it. So when I saw the work of Barbara Takenaga's on the list of works to consider, I was really first struck by their absolute beauty. And then also, again, in this framework of fragmentation, I liked there's a lot of abstract, I would say abstracted elements in this exhibition in the work of other artists. And there are a few who are really, like Barbara's work, completely abstract. And I just want to show a quick installation shot from the exhibition. So here you see 5 of Barbara's works hanging in the center, and then on either side, flanked by a work by Polly Apfelbaum on the left and Julie Moretu on the right. And so Barbara, I'm interested to hear from you. I mean, I have my own thoughts about, you know, why I included your work in this exhibition, Positive Fragmentation. But I was wondering if you could share with us your thoughts about how fragmentation, how you use fragmentation in your work.
Sure. First of all, can you hear me okay? Okay, good. And I wanted to thank you both for inviting me. This is really lovely. So, you know, I was thinking about the name of the show, and I really like the fact that it's positive fragmentation, because I think in a lot of ways, when you think of the word fragmentation, it seems like something coming apart or being broken down. And I think it's kind of lovely to think about it in the opposite way. And so in particular with my images, they're especially, I'd say 1, 2, 3, 4 of the earlier ones, there are small parts that make up larger parts. And it's always been, yeah, exactly like this one, which is called Shaker Blue. You know, it has all those little things that are building a larger image. So there's that. And there's also, I think, most of these are radial compositions. They are coming from the center, really small and moving to the edge. And people have talked about them in terms of the almost kind of Big Bang images. So they're exploding outward from the center, but I think they could equally be going in the other direction. And I think that kind of dichotomy of the small and the large, the going forward or going backward, in terms of the idea of fragmentation and pulling things apart and looking at them, I'm really interested in that. And I've been interested in that for a long time. So for instance, even looking at this one of the macro things that comes up sometimes in the work is even the idea of fractals, Mandelbrot fractals. And it's not that they are specifically like that. There's a kinship, I think, more than they are mathematical kind of diagrams. So what I mean by that, for instance, is this one that we're looking at, is that there is a sort of system where all of the lines are moving in this spiral, and then they change directions, and then they change directions again, moving out from the middle, so that the idea is that the small image is contained in the large image. So it's like examples of fractals might be fjords seen from aerial views, or tree branches, and so I sort of loved that idea of fragmentation, if you will, and even things that aren't really fractals, but are things that I've always been interested in. For instance, I was thinking about spirals, for instance, looking at this one, that the spiral on like the cowlick on a baby's head, you can see really well, right? Or dogs have little spirals on their butts or on their knees or something. And I find it really funny and lovely that those spirals are the same structure as, galaxies or something like that. So again, this notion of the small and the large, the long address that astronomers talk about. So those are the kinds of things I was thinking about fragmentation. And not to make this too long-winded, but the other idea that I have to say is in printmaking, especially, this notion of pulling things apart and then reconstructing them is really paramount, because you kind of have to know what you're doing. It's not the same as painting and just kind of putting one thing over another. For example, in some of these prints, if you don't allow for the white to be the white of the paper, you can't, especially in lithographs, you can't print the white over the top like you would in a painting. So what that means is you have to pull the whole process apart and figure out how to make it all work by the time you print light to dark colors. And I think that is a really interesting notion of fragmentation. I could go on and on about printmaking processes and how you really have to kind of follow a system in a certain way. But I guess I could stop there.
Well, I think that, I mean, it's so interesting to make that connection with the process of printmaking, because that's certainly kind of an underlying theme of the exhibition in terms of fragmentation. It's not one, not being a printmaker myself, one that I really was consciously thinking about, but other artists in the exhibition, Nicola Lopez, for instance, have also talked about that process and seeing it as kind of fragmented in a very positive way, right? Like having these particular set of steps that you have to follow to do certain things.
Yeah, and I've always loved that. I love that about printmaking. Because it's sort of a lot of the process is behind the scenes in a way, right? Mm-hmm. You don't know how many times an artist might have had to trace an image to do 10 runs of color to make an image that looks somewhat effortless. Like, yeah.
Sorry, even though I went through this, okay, it's not clicking the right way. All right, sorry. I just wanted to give a little bit more airtime to this one as well, because it's so luminous in person. You can see in the, our viewers can see in the caption that there's metallic gold powder on it, and it really does have this beautiful kind of shimmering quality to it. The spiraling isn't so evident here, but there's certainly that kind of push and pull feeling of contraction here with things going in towards the center again.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you have this series, that you chose this series of work, because that first one, the radial ones, you start from the middle, or I start from the middle and just expand outward. And these particular ones, I started in the corners and moved to the center, which is why you get that contraction. And I would just say, as an aside, people always ask me about my influences, and a lot of my influences are Eastern, Japanese prints and Indian miniature paintings. But this particular print came from seeing a really beautiful Fra Angelico show at the Met. And I got entranced by all the angel wings. Yeah, they were wonderful.
Yeah, I can definitely see that here. I mean, those, yeah. He was a master of kind of making these fantastical angel wings, wasn't he?
Yeah, yeah.
So there's kind of an odd man out, if you will, in the 5, and that is Small Springs Backsplash. That's from 2019, so a bit more recent. And I think this is a nice segue into talking about, your later work, in terms of how the imagery is kind of changing. You have a bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? Almost apparently like free-handedness in the composition. And I wanted to take the opportunity to let everyone know that we are so pleased that we now have a work by you in the collection. And it's not a print, it's a acrylic on paper. And it was donated to us by Donna and Bruce Polichar. And we are so thrilled to have you represented in our collection. And this too, I think, again, is a good segue into talking about your more recent work and your current work, and kind of the different look that is present in your work now.
Yes, and I'm really pleased that you have that one print, the most recent print, because I think a lot of artists do this, but I worked on those earlier, more radial compositions literally for 10 years. And I always used to think that I just had one idea with a lot of variations. And it was this kind of compulsion to make that work. And I won't go into all of it, but it was, there was something about the process and the ritualistic filling up of space, and the great kind of calm of having work to do every day. And I did that for a long time. And I came to a point where I was done. I just couldn't make one more painting like that, or one more print. And I sort of had quite a time of trying to turn the ship. I always think of an ocean liner, trying to turn the ship into a new way of making work. So there is a difference between those earlier 4 prints and then the last one that you have, as well as that the work on paper. I'm completely thrilled that you have that piece. It's a favorite of mine, and Donna and Bruce Polichar were so great to donate it. But if I wanted to just give you a little idea of how I'm working now. So the earlier work was very controlled and very tight, and I loved that, and I really needed to make that work. And when I got to this point of trying to change it, I thought, like a teacher, since I've been a teacher for so long, I would give myself assignments. And one of them was trying very hard to not control everything and incorporate a lot more chance. And so one thing that I started doing was literally, I thought it was kind of a joke, but I was kind of making these abstract expressionist pours of paint and throwing paint around and just letting the paint dictate the image, as opposed to me being so strongly in control. And what happens, you can see it in this, the one that's up, this work on paper. I just sort of poured this background paint. And then I have been laughingly saying that I'm some sort of weird combination of abstract expressionism and what would I call it? Surrealist parlor games, right? Those, you know, like Exquisite Corpses, or, you know, they have all these great things, frottage, where they would sort of mash two surfaces of canvas or paper together and pull them apart. I think Max Ernst used to do that. And then you get these weird smeary paint things and you just sort of stare at them and try to figure out what it reminded you of in a kind of Rorschach way. Right? Or, there was one, a great one, actually, Sheila Pepe used to do this. I love it. Which would be, you make little sculptures, little tiny sculptures, and you put a light on them and they cast shadows, and then you look at the shadows, and the shadows determine the drawing that you're going to make. So I was trying to do all this kind of loosening the image up and then exerting my own control into it, you know, the things that I saw, the things that I like to do. And so a lot of these are like the print, and this one, there's this weird little kind of flamey thing. It's like I don't know what it is. It's a geyser or a flame, or it's like the splash that comes up when you know, something hits the water, or, you know, it could be any number of things. And I like the fact that it's, as you were talking about at the beginning, it's abstract, but it starts having possibilities in terms of openness of interpretation. So that's kind of the thing that I've been doing lately.
Barbara, I really appreciate, you said this during our chat before we had our show. And I love, you know, I love that you sort of give the viewer the freedom to interpret the way they wish. It's a real sort of freeing opportunity for viewers, and also a real gift that you give as an artist. And so I just want to say thank you for that. I also just am really taken by, I'm so excited to see this in person, and it's quite a small piece. I'm particularly taken by, it almost seems as if it's glowing from sort of that orange and yellow sort of warmth towards the top half of your composition. And just to sort of point out as well that we really see the substrate you're working on, right? We see sort of the ragged edge of the paper, which really adds something as well to the entire composition. It's quite beautiful. And I want to talk a little bit about scale and how that plays a role in your work. But before that, Jenny from Omaha was wondering, she's from Omaha, that's great. So we can talk a little bit about Nebraska, but she's wondering who Belinda is. So this work is titled Untitled, but the subtitle is Belinda. So we're curious a little bit about who Belinda is or was.
Oh, that's so funny. Okay, first of all, I'm from Nebraska, so I love that Jenny is calling in from Nebraska.
Yeah.
Born and raised, love Nebraska. Well, it's funny in some ways. I kind of don't even want to answer that question, only because at some point I have a really hard time with titles. Because I want the title to do what you were talking about, Addie, which is that the title keeps the image open, and it doesn't close it down too specifically, you know, as opposed to me saying, calling this a bodhisattva with a pearl necklace or something, right? Then it's very specific. So I've been titling all of the works on paper untitled, and then I will put in parens a way for me to identify it. And I made this piece when I was having a show at the Kalamazoo, oh my gosh, the museum in Kalamazoo. And Belinda Tate was the curator. And for some reason, I was trying to remember this work, and I was thinking, oh yeah, that was when Belinda came for a studio visit or something. So I put Belinda on the title to identify it for me, and then it sounds like it's an homage. So theoretically, if I should have probably given it to Belinda, but now that's where the title comes from.
That's great. Thank you for sharing. Well, I'm wondering, it's interesting that it's more of a reference for you, a marker of time, right? And I'm wondering if maybe Jenny or I will be a subtitle of one of the works you're working on now, or maybe
that'd be good. What am I working on? That's
no pressure.
Yeah,
no pressure at all. But
no. Sometimes it will be a name of somebody that happens, or sometimes it will be really boring things, like it'll be a color. It'll be like ultramarine, or yellow and gold or something, because otherwise I get very confused about which piece it is.
Well, I think it's interesting because as an educator at a museum, we talk a lot about interpretation, personal interpretation of works we see, and also we talk to visitors about how sometimes the title is really helpful. It's a clue that the artist is given, and sometimes it maybe further confuses or makes us ponder the work in a different way. So I love hearing you talk about sort of the very pragmatic reasons for some of your titles. I would love to hear more, if you don't mind talking a little bit. I see that where you're in your studio today, and I see a work behind you, which is amazing. And you talked to us a little bit in our pre-conversation about scale and sort of how your choice of scale and work sometimes plays a practical role, and sometimes plays a more sort of theoretical role. So I'm wondering if you talk a little bit about sort of the scale you worked on across your career, and sort of how you make those decisions about how large a work will be. And yeah, this is a beautiful example of a very large work that you've created more recently.
Right, that one is about I can't remember, 6 feet by maybe 18 feet, something like that. Well, okay, the large ones, I'll kind of go backwards on that question. Since this is up, it's a large piece, and I wanted to make something that had a little kinship with Japanese folding screen paintings. So that's why they're divided into these panels. Practically, the other reason is that I paint flat on a table or sawhorses, and I literally can only get to the middle of 60 inches. So I can't make a painting that's larger. It has to have one side that's at least 60 inches or smaller. So part of it is just practical. I can't literally make a painting that big. But okay, going back to your question about scale. So I love working really large. I've been doing things that are wallpaper. For instance, I've been doing wallpaper pieces that can get even bigger. And I think of them as these sort of prints. They are digital prints, literally. But I have worked anywhere from 5x7 to a very large scale. And I really love both ends of that spectrum. It kind of goes back to the micro macro thing. I really think that they present different challenges. I think artists out there, they know that. For a while, it was weirdly dictated by my studio, where I was in graduate school, and I liked making big work, and we used to talk about a kind of Napoleon complex about why little short people liked making really big work. But there's something, I think, about the scale and the visceral feeling about when something is in your peripheral vision, and it's about your body size and the size on the wall. But then when I first came to New York, I got a studio that was 200 square feet. And literally, I could only make really small paintings. So I made paintings that were 9 by 12 and 12 by 10 at the largest. And somebody had said to me, and I took it as a good challenge, which is that it's easy to make a large piece, right? And it's really difficult to make a good small piece. Again, I know this is an old cliche, but they used to say this in school all the time, right? If you can't make it good, make it big. And if you can't make it big, make it red. So I just felt like, well, okay, I can make, I'm going to really try to make good, very small paintings. And I started making these little paintings with a brush. It wasn't a single hair brush, but it made the tiniest little line. And I made these little single hair paintings that it eventually turned into the central area, what do you call it? Radial compositions. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm going to take I think we have a detail of this particular work next. Yeah, just to get a better sense.
Yeah, and you know what I would say about this, just going back to the earlier question about process, and I actually think it's weirdly related to printmaking too, is that the look of it is one thing. And when you, again, fragmentation, positive fragmentation, when you pull it apart, it's very funny. So the way this is made is that gray, and you can't tell, but it's gray, sort of metallic pearlescent paint went on first. So that was the first layer. Then the white little, whatever those are, came next. Then I put the little white dots around the bottoms. And then I painted out everything that I didn't want to keep with blue. And then the last thing was I painted on, you can't really see it in this slide, but there's a little sort of Japanese wave pattern that's painted over the whole thing. So you would think it would be the opposite, that the blue would start first. But in fact, it has a kinship to the way prints are made as well.
And did you do that because you wanted to achieve that particular grayish color? So if you had the blue under the gray, it would read differently, I'm assuming.
You know, that's a good question. I think it goes back more than that. It goes back to the way that I've been painting, which is I do the paint pour, my fake ABX, or as Jennifer Doran at Robichon Gallery said to me, she called it, she said, no, it's Babs X. It's Barbara, it's Babs X. So when I'm laying down this color, and I don't know what the paint's going to do, then what happens is I look at it and I sit there and look at it for days and weeks, figure out what it is that I like about the paint flow. And then in some ways I paint out everything that I don't like. Right. So theoretically, yes, I could maybe put the light over the dark blue, but that, how would I find the image? Right. Yeah. So yeah.
Let's show a few more here as well. This is gorgeous.
Oh, I know. Oh my God. I could tell you how this one was made. It's so funny.
Yeah, so, please do, because it looks like feathers.
Yeah.
So I did that. So what came first was that sort of blue and white, that sort of weird feathery thing. And it just dried that way. And it was beautiful. And of course I couldn't just leave it because I'm not really an ABX person. So I was trying to figure out what to do. And it was weirdly, it scared me because it looked like a big angel thing, right? It was really creepy. And so I painted it all out around the edges. And then the center just was so pretty. The center was really beautiful. And I just didn't know what to do. So I just took some black paint and poured it from the top edge. And I just poured it over the middle thinking, well, the center's too pretty. I'm just going to cover it. start over. And then I liked it. So then I dropped the pattern over that and dropped another pattern on the side. But anyway, that was a very funny example of something being, it was really too lovely. Yeah. I wanted to make it a little creepier somehow.
It's like looking at the sun or looking directly at a god. It's too much. You can't handle it.
It makes me think of like marbled paper, like the sort of that blue background, and then it also, what we perceive as sort of closer to us, that netting, that sort of yellowish gold netting feels so organized and controlled. There's a beautiful balance to your work that feels both improvisational or by chance, but then sort of there's clearly sort of your approach to sort of reining it in. And I love that when we chatted earlier, you said you're trying to find this compositional balance between letting go and reining it in. And I really feel that in your work. It feels both very sort of, there's a release and there's a sort of a constraint at the same time. And for me, it's very comfortable. It's like comfortably harmonious, I guess. I think it's interesting. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Yeah, no, I was thinking about that after we talked. I thought a few things. One is, I think, when you listen to artists talk about their work, a lot of times I'm always interested in what people say. And yet at the same time, sometimes when I'm saying things, I'm thinking, well, of course, this is how all artists think, right? That you could talk to anybody about the way they're making work, and there are elements that we're all doing that are the same, right? Trying to find a balance, or trying to exert a certain control, and trying to, okay, not to go too far afield on that, but I was thinking about that, and about how the process of how one makes art, it's not true for everybody, but I think for a lot of people, it relates to how we live in a way, and not to get gooey about it, but I think there is something, I have to say, just in terms of my daily life, about trying to go with the flow and be accepting of change and stuff happening to me, and all this random stuff, and getting old and dealing with COVID and all this. And then where is the control, right? That you have to have a routine, that I have to clean the house even though I want not to, and the chaos can't get too crazy. And I think that there are parallels between, your working process and your living process. And again, not to be redundant, but I just think it's so fascinating the way things work, right? That the small forces in paint, and the small forces in what you're doing in your studio with the paint mirror the bigger forces in your own life, or the bigger forces on a big scale of gravity and physics and all that. I think it's just an incredible coming together, positive fragmentation. Yeah.
Go ahead, Jen.
So I was just going to say, we have a few more minutes left, and to bring it kind of back towards the practical for the last little bit. It was beautiful what you said, but a lot of people have been expressing curiosity about these pearlescent powders. No, I'm going the wrong way. That you used in some of the earlier works.
Oh, sure. And you know what? I should definitely give a shout out to Bud Shark, who's a master printer at Shark's Ink in Colorado, who printed all of these lithographs. He's just amazing. And I had been using pearlescent paint in my work, and it came a lot from wanting the work to be a little bit more active. I noticed that at how do I say this? I went to somebody's house, and I was looking at a piece they had, and the lighting was pretty dark on the piece, and I thought, oh, it'd be nice if the piece changed with different times of day, and that I should experiment with pearlescent color. And then I had said this to Bud when we were making the prints, and he said, oh, well, let's use these pearlescent powders. And basically, it's tricky in that you really have to have good ventilation in a mask, but the powders kind of sit up on the ink, and they're very beautiful, and they give a whole sheen, and they change the color slightly.
Yeah. Are those applied by hand after the print?
Yes. Yeah. So again, anybody that's out there who's a printmaker, be really careful with that stuff, though. It's it's like powdered pigment, basically, in a way, and you don't want to inhale it.
So Barbara, to that, and people are curious about that particular process. Since it's a powder, you're applying it to the wet ink? Is that how it adheres to the paper, or are you adding some sort of?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Great. That's just to clarify. Awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. It just let everyone know if you have any other questions for Barbara. We have a couple of more minutes, and Barbara, it's just so lovely to have you on and to hear more about your work. Yeah, here's some of your some of your newer pieces as well.
I just want to scroll through them so people can see, what you're working on now. And are you still making prints?
I am still making prints, although, so I was a printmaker in graduate school. I got my MFA in printmaking, and I loved making prints, and I would make big wall installations with prints. But I got to the point where I literally couldn't deal with solvents anymore. So my printmaking lately has been with a master printer. And so I've worked with Bud Shark and with Peter Pettengill at Wingate Studio. And I've had a chance to work with Karen Kunk in Omaha with her, she has a, what's it called? Under pressure printmakers. I love that. And I'm sure I'm forgetting other people. Sarah Amos, who worked at the Vermont Studio Center. So those are the opportunities I get to make prints anymore.
That's great.
You've given us a lot to think about in terms of artistic process and collaboration as well. And I love that the sort of the collaborative works you've made with a master printmaker you had to sort of reverse engineer. You've talked about how you need to sort of think about the layering of color and shape, and how the work that these paintings you're doing is certainly more improvisational and independent. So I love seeing sort of both sides of that coin, Barbara. Thank you so much. Great, some questions. Any tips on, Maria, you may need to clarify. And Maria's asking, do you have any tips on printing on fabric and controlling absorption and bleed? I don't know if you have anything to share.
I don't. And it's funny because I did teach printmaking for 30 years. I haven't noticed that there's a lot of, when my students have printed on fabric, I haven't noticed that there's a lot of problem with the absorption. I think it, clearly has to do with the smoothness of the weave in terms of how much detail you get, or whether the weave gets to the point where it starts pixelating the image a little bit. Somebody who does beautiful work, and I mentioned her before, Sarah Amos, who is, she's a wonderful artist, and she prints on fabric. Her work is really in between printmaking and textile art, and she does amazing stuff, and she stitches into the fabric, and she's and collages onto it. She's somebody I would recommend checking out.
That's great. I actually added her her website to the chat if anyone is interested.
Okay, good.
Yeah, and
sorry, I couldn't be more help on that. Yeah.
Oh no, thank you for addressing that. I have another question that I think is certainly relevant even today. Jenny was wondering how or if COVID had an effect on your work, Barbara.
I think for like a lot of artists that I've talked to, I don't want to say upside because that doesn't sound right. Being in lockdown for so long, a lot of artists felt like, oh, all I have to do is go to the studio, right? That all the other things that you normally would do, going to dinner, going to openings, doing residencies, going to lectures, none of that was available. And all you had to do was go to the studio. So for a lot of people, that was a great productive time, right? And I think it was for me as well, just sort of uninterrupted every day going to the studio. I think the larger question of what a pandemic does to your emotional and intellectual headspace and how that affects your work, I'm not sure that that's clear to me yet, right? I think sometimes when there are these external, well, everything is influential, right, on anybody's work. And it's hard to say when and how it surfaces. So I figure that's a good question. And I might know more about the answer in 3 or 4 years, hopefully when we're out of this.
Yeah, I would say that certainly the effects of COVID, and I think many people are still processing, and it will take years for us to really come to terms with the ways in which it's changed our thinking, our lives. I want to just thank you again, Barbara, for being with us, and everyone is in the chat just saying thank you so much for sharing your work. And I will share your website again so folks can take a look at the trajectory of your body of work. And I think we'll conclude here.
Yeah, Barbara, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. And can I should have given a shout out to my gallery, DC Moore Gallery in New York. They're wonderful. And I'm having a show coming up in Denver at Robichon in April. So if anybody's in that area, please stop in.
Congratulations.
Thanks. And thank you. Thank you.
Oh, it was such a pleasure. I'm so happy that you're represented in the exhibition and now in our own collection. It's really just fantastic. So thank you again.
Thank you. And thank you for everybody that Zoomed in. You must be all exhausted with Zooming.
But before everyone goes, I just want to tell you to mark your calendar for our next episode of NMWA xChange, which will be Tuesday, March 8th at noon, per usual, Eastern Daylight Time, Standard Time, whatever, East Coast time. We'll be speaking to artist Katzen Arts, and her art interweaves her own memories and imagination with images from archival photographs and the works of other artists. And Namoda will discuss her practice as well as her current creative collaboration with J. Crew. And March 8th is, of course, everyone should know this, International Women's Day.
Yes, thank you, Jenny. Yes, we're celebrating. We celebrate women every day, all day at the museum, but March 8th is a special day for us at NMWA. In addition to our next NMWA xChange with Katzen Arts, the museum is offering a whole host of virtual programming. So please do check out our offerings and register to participate. We hope to see you all March 8th for all of our programs. And again, thanks to everyone for joining us today. Thank you, Barbara, and I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Take care, everyone. See you next time.